Family Guy's 6 darkest episodes. While certainly not the first adult animated sitcom on television to push the boundaries, the darkest Family Guy episodes prove how far the show is willing to go. Though often uncomfortable and controversial, much of Family Guy's identity is tied to its proclivity for potentially distasteful humor. Making light of everything from the assassinations of prominent political figures to all too soon topical jokes, there's almost nothing from which the show will shy away. There are endless moments in Family Guy meant entirely to offend, and some are more palatable than others. The darkest Family Guy episodes are just the most egregious examples of the show's over-the-top satire and cutting humor, although many go above and beyond the regular line-crossing Family Guy is known for. Family Guy has often been criticized as a pale imitation of The Simpsons, and the show's emphasis on the everyday suburban family made the comparison undeniably apparent. However, Family Guy's willingness to go to much more offensive and challenging places than The Simpsons, exploring dicier themes and pushing the boundaries of network television, has resulted in these unremittingly dark and controversial installments. At 6 we have Road to the North Pole, Season 9 Episode 7. Road to the North Pole is one of Stewie and Brian's Road to episodes, which means it is a road trip storyline. Most Family Guy fans know that these specific episodes are almost always dark and disturbing, with more mature subject matter than the regular raunchy jokes the show is known for. In this one, Stewie and Brian encounter a rude Santa at the mall, so they head to the North Pole to kill Santa Claus. What they find leads to very disturbing moments, and it just keeps getting worse. They find Santa, a depressed old man who wants Stewie to kill him. Santa forces the elves to inbreed to supply more workers, horribly mutating them. The reindeer have become feral, carnivorous monsters. When Stewie and Brian decide to take Santa's place, things go from bad to worse when they assault and possibly kill 2 parents in front of their child because they caught them in their house. This is not a Family Guy episode any young Santa fan should ever walk in on. At 5 we have Roads to Vegas, Season 11 Episode 21. In the Season 11 Family Guy episode, the disturbing moments of the Road to series continue as Brian and Stewie head to Las Vegas. Roads to Vegas sees Brian win tickets to see Celine Dion in Las Vegas, but Stewie convinces Brian to use his new teleportation device. It doesn't work, so Brian and Stewie take a plane instead, not realizing the machine cloned them and sent the clones to Las Vegas, meaning there are now 2 each of them. This switch causes problems as one version of Brian and Stewie have terrible luck in Vegas and lose money while the others are successful but end up losing their money to the other 2, meaning mobsters put out a hit on them. What makes this disturbing is that one version of Brian becomes suicidal, and the other version of Stewie ends up with a gun to his head by the mafia. By the end, only Stewie and the clone Brian survive in the very disturbing conclusion. At 4 we have Coma Guy, Season 18 Episode 17. Coma Guy is a disturbing Family Guy episode because it shows Peter Griffin on the brink of death and Lois making the decision to let him go. The episode starts as strange as expected, with Lois wanting Peter to learn how to read and telling him to start with George Orwell's 1984. He misunderstands and starts listening to Van Halen's 1884 instead. This leads to a confrontation with the giant chicken, and Peter ends up in a coma. While Lois is trying to decide whether to unplug the life support machines, Peter dreams of several departed characters and is asked to cross over to the other side. However, humorously, he refuses when he sees there is no Wi-Fi password and wakes up right before Lois can pull the plug. It wasn't over because Lois resigned herself to this fate and still considered leaving him. It remains very dark and disturbing to the last moment. At 3 we have Quagmire's Quagmire Season 12 Episode 3. What makes the Family Guy episode, Quagmire's Quagmire, so disturbing is that it almost seems to make light of domestic abuse and violence. Quagmire is always a character with no kinks that he won't sample, and his actions have created some of the most disturbing moments in the animated adult series. What makes this Family Guy episode so disturbing, even more so than others, is that Quagmire is who is on the wrong end of the kinks, and in this case, it is far over the line concerning domestic abuse. In this episode, Quagmire meets a new woman named Sonia, who is repairing his computer. The 2 agree to go out on a date when she sees the porn on his computer and thinks they have a lot in common. However, when Quagmire shows up at the bar with a black eye, it turns out Sonia's kink is being abusive and controlling. It takes his friends, including Joe in his role as a police officer, to save him from Sonia. When Quagmire admits he prefers to be in control, it makes light of the subject matter. At 2 we have New Kidney in Town Season 9, Episode 10. There has been more than one episode where Peter Griffin is at death's door. There was also the very notorious episode where Brian actually dies. This episode takes both of those ideas and threatens them in the same episode. As expected with Peter Griffin, he does something very stupid and almost dies because of it when he drinks kerosene. It causes immediate kidney failure, and he has to have a transplant, or he will die. Lois is not a match for him, and she won't allow their kids to consider it. However, in what makes little sense, Brian the dog is a perfect match for Peter's kidneys. However, since a dog's kidney is smaller, Brian would have to donate both of them, which would likely kill him, and if it doesn't work, it could kill Peter as well. When Peter and Brian were saying goodbye before the surgery, it was distressing and very dark. At 1 we have Fresh Air Season 12 Episode 14. Like a surprising number of Family Guy episodes, Season 12, Episode 14, Fresh Air, has an incestuous-based premise, as Peter attempts to marry his son, Chris, to get his hands on the Pewterschmidt fortune, to which Chris is the heir. Peter Griffin is a terrible dad, who has been seen many times before, and most fans of the show simply accept that as part of the comedy of Family Guy. However, this took his bad parenting into a new and even more disturbing area. Even though it's already something of a weird and dark narrative, what makes Fresh Air one of the most offensive Family Guy episodes is due to how he tries to win his own son's love. Peter kills an innocent child and then proposes to Chris with Lois's ring. Family Guy isn't exactly a show about learning lessons, but Fresh Air is a tough one to stomach.